So, is this video a bit too dark? Yes. Was it intentional? Yes. You cannot buy style, but you do need a job to be fashionable. What people don't realize when talking about men's fashion is your demeanor is directly tied to your economic status. There's no such thing as a fashionable homeless person, um, because fashion is a function of class elitism. You can be the wealthiest person on earth and be poorly dressed, but technically speaking, you are a fashion icon if you're intentionally wearing your clothes. It's so important for unionized workers' co-ops to exist because they're the strongest representation of working class security. And it's just that, primarily speaking, well, yeah, so strongest representation of working class security fighting against um, like British capitalism, where land ownership, multi-generational wealth, old money play a role. The British conservative tailored men's fashion is very important in men's fashion because that conservatism is rooted in, amongst other things, land ownership and the necessary long-term mindset necessary to preserve your inheritance and then also pass it down to your kids, which is the ultimate game of capitalism. Um, Being a Nepo baby, inheriting a fortune, inheriting an industrial, or inheriting a company, and then that's an industrial, like that essentially is the economy. When you see fashionable men without this mindset, you should consider them freaks, and not in any like positive, hyper individualized, make a statement all your own type of way. Like, just honestly, they're not grounded in an approach that's historically rooted in even textiles, let alone just clothing that has meaning. In the United Kingdom, I bet, or maybe just in Britain, it's traditionally expected, I don't know, traditionally normal for a property to be associated with a tartan, um, with a, what would you call it? I have a blanket right here. I don't, you might not even be able to tell. Like, this isn't exactly, so black and green. What's it called? Check. Oh, plaid. And that makes the clothing significant. Um, what it does is ties a person to a it ties a person to a precedent. Well, it ties a person to a pedigree. The real estate represents a pedigree. It represents a family, a coat of arms, a heritage, and like that's it. Like that's the entire sum of men's fashion. There's a military element that relies on a conservative approach tied to land due to the class-based education of having inherited an inheritance and then handing down an inheritance. There's nothing else to it. In that way, I have been looking at Eton shirts. I have bought a few from the thrift store for like $12 each. These are definitely not ones that I want to keep. I would like a white button-down Oxford that's correctly fitted to my neck, which is not something you can get with Sunspell. I would have to begin working out to wear Sunspell correctly, and Sunspell doesn't come with a shank on the button. But also, Sunspell may be a more generic. Well, it's like that's the thing. When you talk about men's fashion correctly, essentially men's clothing is supposed to be an afterthought. You're supposed to be so wealthy that you just go to the tailor and you offload the responsibility of fashion onto them, and then you just look good because you have enough money to buy a wardrobe that has enough pieces so that you effortlessly grab clean items every day. And there's a uniform element that gives you a uniform that identifies you as an individual while following conservative codes based on your inheritance, which is definitely not liberal. And you just get on with your life. There's not supposed to be, like in women's clothing, the money is not supposed to be an issue. The quality is not supposed to be an issue. The tailoring can be exceptional, strictly as a justification, not necessarily as a requirement. And this mentality is represented clearly in some restaurants, or in some cultures where the woman is given a menu that doesn't have any prices. We've lost so much to globalization. The whole failing of Europe due to democracy not being preserved when bringing in colored people as refugees. So much of life is useless, and like you see it in the clothing. I'm wearing right now a shirt by Sunspell. It's made in England. They're not the best shirt, but they are me. I want to care about my clothes, and I think, or I can talk about myself for a moment. I want to care about my clothes because I personally don't have to have that much to survive very comfortably. I know to buy pots and pans that are quality enough that I'm not ingesting um, forever chemicals. I know to eat enough vegetables that give me a vitamin and mineral profile that preserves my DNA as I age. I know to keep myself safe physically by working out and like having a home that's functioning, but I'm not impressed at all with consumption as a signal. The security I feel from wearing quality clothing is unquestionably important. Having psychological security, in my case, is directly connected to the healthy relationship I have with my clothes. And the problem with that is that style plays a demonstrably huge role in that. But you can't have style as an individual. You have to have style just like everything, you need a community. But I'm not just talking about people who are attempting to be fashionable. I'm talking about people that are rooted in this class process that I just spent the last 10 minutes talking about. Workers' co-ops that are unionized, they do the furthest extent possible to critique capitalism and ground the working class into a offensible, like into a offensive machine against a world that's trying to retain slave ownership. I slave ownership over like their workers, over like maintaining industry. The problem with like this British capitalism is that the conservatism is toxic. We could have land ownership be a prerequisite to multi-generational wealth if it was in a tax legal system or a tax code of um, like land tax, but we don't. We're taxing the labor. And in that way, the control that these capitalists have over us is way too high. And so people, they become, well, capitalism functions through, or like late stage capitalism functions through extremely serious propaganda, instilling into the individual that hyper individualism is the correct thing, and so your style is like needs to be hyper individual. And so do you see what the problem is? Style is based off of conservatism in this economic model. The individuality is technically 100% correlated to land ownership, but you can't own land as an individual without multi-generational wealth, so you have to do it in a group context, which means you need unionized workers co-ops to even attempt to have a tartan, to have your clothing be meaningful. I'm going to leave it there. I enjoyed this conversation. I hope you can approach my my process and see where I'm coming from, because I'm pretty peeved that I'm having a difficult time choosing either to even try to buy Eton shirts.